doing some thinking.
Thinking inside your head.
Yeah, thinking inside my head instead of thinking out loud, because I said I was thinking out loud, but I wasn't. I was just sitting here, gazing into Never Land. I heard something the other day. This is a funny comment. I love it when someone says, "I was thinking inside my head."
Where else would you be thinking?
It always cracks me up. I was thinking inside my head. I had this thought in my head. Oh yeah, you did. As opposed to, where was it? It was in your hand. It was in your pocket. You got a thought in your pocket. Maybe you did.
Maybe. Keep it in the pocket, like music.
Keep it in the pocket. Okay, so here's something that's kind of cool and interesting, is that we have now had a handful of guests on this podcast of Drop the Check.
Yeah.
And it has, they've been quite interesting to me, because there have been a few winemakers now, right? Some that we have heard, and people have heard out there into the universe and metaverse have heard some of these winemakers. Some they've not heard yet.
Yeah.
And so it's been really interesting for me playing the part of, whatever, Greek chorus or dumb guy, or the guy that thinks, maybe not in his head, but in his pocket, to learn about these people that they've come through you, that you have known through winemaking, and I've gotten to maybe understand not only them a little bit more, but wine a little bit more, and this culture a bit more as well.
Yeah, and like what people actually do on a day-to-day basis. That's a question I get all the time. I've mentioned before that my family is like, well, you're not really a farmer, or not even my family. I mean, people say that to me all the time. And it's like they also like, okay, now that harvest is over, what do you do for the rest of the year? Like, there's not something we're all the time. And so it is, I think maybe we'll continue to get into that with the podcast, although it brings up an interesting point, because in our long form conversations, sitting at the table, getting ready to drop the check after about an hour of having a great conversation, I like to keep that focused. And the Matt Rorick interview to me is perfect, because it got into, the anthropology and the history of who these people are that create these pieces of art, whether they're, a winemaker or a chef or whatever these people might be doing that we'll be talking to in the future. That's what that podcast is about. But, like you said, you get to learn like little snippets on what we do for, a day-to-day basis. And I think that's going to be fun. I think we're going to start adding in a little, 5-minute segment that we'll just publish into the stream, into the Drop the Check podcast stream. And people, if they want to learn some more technical stuff, we can feed that information to them,
Absolutely right.
That can either be with me and you, or if we have a guest here, we'll do a different take and let those guys, talk about, something in particular.
You know what? We should bring Matt Rorick back just to let's have small segments of Matt Rorick makes you feel good.
Yes, I like
How about that?
I like that.
Okay, that being said, this Matt Rorick interview that you guys were having such a great conversation was broken up into 2 parts. And I like that you even just said anthropologically, the way that this went about. The first segment of the interview that we have already posted was really a background of Matt Rorick, early history of Rorick, to kind of to get us to a point.
What forms the man? What forms
exactly.
the man?
What is the clay mold of where did he come from? Because this guy is a different kind of guy. That where did he come from to get us to a place in time where his formative years took off and get us to where he is right now. So it was distinctly broke up into 2 parts, and
it's like book 1, book 2 of the Bible.
There we go.
Old Testament and New Testament.
Hey man,
So
which one are you doing?
And we're getting ready to hear the New Testament.
Watch out. The little dicey stories here. I don't know.
Pause for that, because when we developed this podcast, when I first pitched my idea to you, it was like I've said before, this self-indulgent thing that was like, I want to hear these stories of these people, and if we can get it out, we find friends who want to listen to it, great. But would you like to know, even though we did the interview, the conversation with Matt, and then we edited it, Since it's been published, I have personally listened to it 3 times.
Yeah.
That's how much
Yes.
I just personally enjoy it. I get great satisfaction about hearing him speak and hearing that history. And so I love the way that it's broken apart. And now that we're going to get the kind of current vibe of what's going on. And also, Mike, would you talk about this? When I talked about how we're going to do this format, what's it going to look like? What's it going to sound like? Maybe better put, what's it going to sound like? And I talked to you about some ideas I liked about how things are edited and how the conversation goes, and maybe, music and how that plays a part in the picture. And I haven't heard your final edit of part 2.
Yeah.
Can you speak
What's
to me
gonna
about
be?
that? Is it going to have a different little vibe to it?
Hey, I don't know.
Okay.
Maybe we listen and find out. I'll give you a teaser.
Mm.
It might get a little funky.
Oh, ain't it funky now?
That's right. Guess what? It's Matt Rorick, part 2. What do you say?
Part 2. Let's get into it.
Let's get into it. Welcome to Drop the Check. Today's episode is part 2 of our conversation with lowride rider, P-Funk lover, and overall awesome human being. Let's give a warm welcome to Forlorn Hope Wine's own Matthew Rorick.
So got out and started my collegiate career, and that sort of comes in where I moved in with my grandfather. I had nowhere to live. My grandmother had passed away recently, or a few years back, I should say. And my mother suggested, why don't you move in with Granddad? I think he could use the company. And I mean, that turned out
give
to
me
be
give me your age right at this point.
21, 22.
Okay.
Right in there. And so, we can come back to that as we need to, but that really was the genesis of my interest in wine, the foundation, the fostering of my interest in wine.
Exactly. So let's do a little bit of a backstory here, because you're moving in with Granddad, and I want to know this growing up, because and you can fill in the blanks as the story goes, but it's very important because all along the time while you're growing up and doing your thing, Granddad had an appreciation for wine, and he's already collecting.
Correct. So he's a huge, I don't know. This is a funny thing. I don't know that I ever asked him where he got his start in wine, where his interest first sort of crystallized.
Right, but when you're growing up, do you remember him buying wine? Do you remember him collecting wine? Do you remember that being an important part of his life, or it was just oblivious to you?
I remember that he was a great entertainer. He would host the family parties. He and my grandmother loved to host them, put a big spread together. They cooked. And wine was always a part of that. And that later became really the thing that hooked me with wine. When I got out of the Navy and moved in with him, I was starting a degree in literature, in English. That's what I thought I wanted to do. I wanted to study language. I wanted to teach language and writing. And so I started my collegiate career, and I'm living with Granddad, and he's, was such a good time. I mean, an amazing set of years that I got to share with him. He taught me how to cook, and a lot of how he learned to cook came from his experiences on the trail when he was herding cattle. He was a wizard with leftovers. He could turn things that looked like they were completely not meant to go together into something that looked damn gourmet. And so I'd come into the kitchen. There's a kitchen with a big island, tall ceiling, very bright and airy, big tall windows on one wall. And I could spread out my books and be working on my homework, and he's cooking and kind of talking at me while he's cooking, explaining what he's doing in the kitchen, what he's putting together. And then he'd say, well, let's go out to the cellar and pick some wines. And because he had this cellar, he had no one to share with, sometimes we'd open like 4 bottles of wine a night. He'd say, this one's going to be great with what we're having. This one, not so much. And these 2 are going to be not great, and let's taste them all and see how those flavors actually work or don't work. And so, what a great way to foster an interest in someone. Like, you're actually tasting it. You're having the physical experience. You're saying, I see that this type of wine elevates the meal and this one doesn't. Okay, now I see there's a purpose for all of these, just like with spices. Like, if you put too much of this in this dish, it doesn't even fit, it doesn't match. But if you put a little bit of it in that dish, suddenly everything just clicks. And I had no exposure to that prior.
So, but okay, that's about food and wine for sure. But here's, as you're telling the story, what I find so interesting and so beautiful, really, is that is that for all these years, there's little Matt Rorick running around the house and going here and there and skateboarding and joining the Navy, and Granddad can show you by example, and he can be himself. But he's not requiring you to do things. You talked about pushing the limits of wanting structure or whatever. He's not requiring that of you. He's probably, more than you observe, making sure you're okay, but observing and letting you be. And when it's your time, he probably knew you would come in. And is that not true?
Sure. I mean, it's very, yes, actually, in talking to other members of my family, like my mother, her brothers, they told a very different story of him. As a primary parent,
right?
He was not that same way.
Fair enough.
And so it kind of, I have to laugh when I think about I look back at pictures of myself from that time.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what the fuck was wrong with me?
What a jerk off.
And I would come rolling in looking like an absolute dipshit. And Granddad would just be like,
well, okay.
Welcome home. Not a problem. Like, stoked to see me. And, how was your day? Everything good? Like, not, what in the fuck are you wearing? What is your hair?
Here's the thing is that I think you see things in people. This is coming from my parenting and my observation of other parents and how I was parented. Like, there are kids who are not good, who we know the end story, and those people need stuff. And there's good kids who just obey all laws and do whatever. And then there's good kids who want to press the edge and want to press the limit. And again, I'll tell you that comes with a level of intelligence, and you have to, if you're good at being a parent or being a leader or whatever, you have to let that person go and do their thing. And I think, in my observation, I'm just speaking out of my ass here, but I think you would be a very different person if you had those types of constrictures on you. I think it's actually very wise, and you should be very thankful of your mom and your dad and your granddad and all those people that let you do your thing. They were very wise in letting you, there's some people you just can't contain like that. So in my retelling of your own story, I think this is all planned out by Granddad.
No, I can see. Yeah, I can't say that didn't happen. He's the kind of guy that would have that kind of master plan and just be chuckling in the background.
Okay, so go back to so you're there living with him. You're doing your studies. You're studying English, and you guys are having these wines. And this is also where I can start to be a part of what you're thinking, because I know the cellar. And Granddad had this, he was buying, 70s and 80s, Burgundy and Bordeaux when they were $12 a bottle.
Yep.
And stocking up on everything. And so how beautiful it is that you just said the words, he didn't have anyone to share it with, and he got to share it with you.
And so it was the wines, but not just the wines. He and my grandmother went to Burgundy and went to Bordeaux to visit, but to buy wine as well. My uncle Nick, when he first married, he went on a honeymoon to Europe with his mother and father. Like they went on a honeymoon all together.
Awesome.
To go buy wine.
Awesome.
So this cellar was stocked. One of the highlights of what was in the cellar for me were all of the first growth Bordeaux's and a handful of second and third growths from the 82 vintage.
Terrible vintage.
When I first started drinking wine, I didn't really know that much about it, and then I start reading about the 82 vintage. I can't, like, that was my introduction to Bordeaux.
Yeah.
So very lucky.
But let me ask you this though: when you're there at the table, and Granddad's telling you about cooking and sharing wines with you, prior to that, did you really have any interest in food and wine, or was it like more of an emotional experience? Now looking back, that that was bred at that moment.
It was bred for me at that moment. I don't think I'd ever experienced meals in that way. And part of it is the age too.
Sure.
I wasn't, that kind of dining culture wasn't a part of my early upbringing. And so it could have been at an earlier
although
era.
you said that your grandmother and grandfather loved to entertain and it was around, you just didn't choose to be a part of that, and it wasn't just in your thing.
Well, I wasn't sitting at the grown-ups table at those dinners, right?
Yeah.
Like all the cousins, we'd be off on our own little table and we'd eat some
you
food
just
and then we'd go play. And it was always great, entertaining, lovely,
sure,
but not in the sense of a
Food and
dining
wine.
experience.
Right.
When I sit down at the table with him as we eat these meals that he's preparing, and then I start joining in with him, and then some nights I'll cook and some nights he'll cook, trading off cooking responsibilities. He's explaining things about wine to me. He's telling me the stories, and with some of the bottles, he can tell me these amazing stories about going to some obscure corner of Burgundy to buy this bottle, and he tells me about the interaction that he had with the vigneron and his wife, and they're having this amazing visit with these people. That's what really hooked me. It was this combination of a meal, an interaction between people unfolding over a meal at a table across. We'd sit for hours some nights just talking and you'd tell more stories. And then combining that with the fact that the stories were about the very things that we were drinking, it created for me just a really strong desire to not have a mindless connection to what I consume. Sure, sometimes you just got to grab a sandwich and whatever's convenient is convenient when you're on the go. But if you have the choice, would you, for me, it's a much more fulfilling experience to know where the food came from, where the ingredients that I used to prepare my food came from, to know the people who grew them or raised them. And the same with wine. So that sitting around that table with Granddad, that's what started this for me. It's all of those things.
I love it. I can feel it. I can suck it all in, and that's exactly the essence of it. That's the essence of this whole conversation. It's like I don't want to say I don't care about winemaking. I care about what we do, as Matt raises his hand. I do care about winemaking, but it's the emotional experience, and that's such a beautiful story, and I can feel it, I can relate to it, and it's I hate saying like the aha moment, because it's not that. It's a lightning bolt of emotion, and your recognition and this realization. It's almost like I wish everyone could have that, and some people have it with whatever other art forms and whatever else it may be. And you are I love to say a person of letters and like, literature and things like that. And that's beautiful and you're intelligent in that way, but there's something different about like when you're there with Granddad and you have this connection of love and you have this realization of like what we're sipping out of the glass and what is the food we're putting into our bodies and what is all that about? And it sucks you in so hard.
And
It
when
sucks you in.
when you look at what consuming a meal together has meant across the existence of our species, you get into some pretty intense stuff.
Very intense.
You share a meal with the people that you also want to survive. Like, you want to survive, you need to eat. You want them to survive, okay, we'll eat a meal together. Otherwise, you don't get any of what the food that I have. You don't get any of what I've got. And choosing your dining partners with that sort of atavistic thing bouncing around in the back of your head, it becomes a very significant thing. Who do you break bread with? How seriously do you take that moment of sharing a meal together, that communion of two humans?
Yeah, and also like in this regard, maybe I'm putting things into play, but I honestly believe this is true. Here's this guy that you ultimately respected very much, and he's breaking bread with you, and you have that moment of going, shit, this is now I'm learning from the master. I'm learning this familial thing, a thing of love, but also something that I need to learn in my life so I can be a survivalist, so that I can pass it on, so I can share this knowledge with other people, so I can share this love with someone else. It's very profound. It sounds silly, I don't know, but it's very profound.
That's indeed, agreed. And one of the things that ends up being a great little side, contrast, I guess I could say, is that going from that experience, sort of having these meals that we shared together, start to foster an interest in wine and a love of wine in me, and starting to feel a deeper connection to it, and then becoming inspired, actually having Granddad say, well, hey, look, you're really into wine, why don't you think about going to Davis and taking an enology degree? So while all of this is happening on this very profound and touching way, this is also when I take my first restaurant job.
Okay.
And enter into a world that is about as far apart from what we just described in terms of
your whole previous life, you mean?
No, I mean in terms of how significant and moving and important
sure.
sitting down to break bread with someone can be. And then I bounce into a restaurant where I'm I love this place. I'm still very close with several of the people that I worked with there.
Can we say the name?
The Hunter Steakhouse.
And I've passed it. It's in Oceanside.
You were wise to pass it.
No, come on. But no, you pointed it out to me one time, and then since then I've been down with the kids and whatever, and we passed by it.
Actually, and it's a chain. It's a chain. I don't know if it's a franchise, but
there's multiple stores,
multiple
restaurants.
Yep, and it originally was called the Hungry Hunter. I think after I left, it rebranded as the Hunter Steakhouse. So when I was there, it was the Hungry Hunter. And, it was...
Was it at the time the nicest restaurant in the hood, or was it just a...
It certainly thought it was. Like
right. And did you perceive it that way?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So
you thought, like, damn, this is...
So it falls into the category I guess we'd call upscale casual,
right?
Which was seriously as fucking
flip-flop casual.
I mean, well, it's Southern California, and so what that conception of upscale casual is,
I gotcha,
versus I don't know, anywhere else in any other big city,
right?
You're gonna walk in wearing that.
Yeah.
We all had to wear ties, which certainly felt very, very
fancy.
Oh, so fancy. and white shirts, keeping those things clean.
Oh God!
You know, because we're talking about a bunch of surf bums running the floor.
Okay, so I get the concept that you walk into the restaurant and it was certainly not having dinner with Granddad and drinking 1982 Chateau Margaux, but you go in and you're like shocked. It's just not dining as I would think of it. There's no heart and love and passion in it. But how about this? Oh, go ahead.
There was some passion in it.
Well, okay. So this is what I want to get into. So you're working in this place though, and you said it's a bunch of surf bums. So your colleagues, your coworkers, did you dig them?
Absolutely.
There you go.
This place. It was made up to be like a steakhouse, right?
Right.
Designed intentionally, low lights, dark wood paneling, booths, little gold lamps, you wanted the full steakhouse experience, right?
Very low light.
Yeah. Yes. And so when I started, I got the job there. I'm a busboy. And the main servers, like the best servers on the floor, I realized pretty quickly that if I want to make good tips, the tips come directly from the servers, so I need to be working for the guys who are actually making money.
Sure.
And so I'm hustling, and pretty soon there, two of them in particular went to the head waiter, and they're like, "Yo, Rorick, we need to train him up. He needs to be a waiter. He doesn't need to be a busboy." So
I'm glad that, because in my mind I'm thinking of 22-year-old Rorick as a busboy. I don't know what was going through your head, and you're a kind person, but I can only imagine you going, "Good Lord, these people."
Well, there's something really nice though about being a busboy. It's like
I loved it.
It's a great balance of responsibility and freedom. You don't make the big money, but you also you're not
making bad money. You're not making bad money, and you don't have to entertain. When you're waiting, you're a performer.
Yes.
You can show your emotion as a busboy and just go, God damn it, and do your thing and go hang out with the back of the house and do that. Go whatever. When you're waiting, you got to be all like fake emotion.
Exactly. Yep. So very different game. So a couple of the servers, Derek, Derek goes to the head waiter, Phil, and says, "We got to train this guy up." And Phil says, "Okay, if you think he can handle it." And Derek's like, "Yeah, it's fine." So I make the cut. I step up to serving, and it was.
How were you? Were you any good?
I think so. I mean, yeah, and learning. So one of the things that stuck with me, I was really lucky to fall in with that group.
Yeah.
People, I think, to your point, people who work in restaurants, you end up with a group of people, at least at some point in your restaurant time, that you click with, that really shape you. Those guys taught me so much about life, but in the workplace, about efficiency and commitment. I mean, I learned a lot in the Navy. I will not downplay that.
Sure. I
still do some things the way that I was taught in boot camp.
Mm-hmm.
But man, like logistics and efficiency in a restaurant, don't walk back to the kitchen with empty hands.
It's a team sport.
Like if you can help, run someone else's food, like do it, just whatever needs to be done, just shut the fuck up and do it, and then someone will do that for you and you'll be so grateful. And, you recognize that.
And it's all elevated. That's what the whole thing about dinner service is, like this orchestra, this Broadway play that's going on, that like if you've never been a part of that, you don't get it. And you can be a diner and you're maybe criticizing the waiter or whatever, but you're not seeing all the other sport that's going on behind you, the drama, the play that's going on, and everything, how the interactions in the front of the house and the back of the house, and how it's all going, and the again, the anger, the busboy who's pissed, whatever. It's a very interesting dynamic. And then here's the thing, it's like being in the Navy or being on a sports team or whatever the case it may be. And when you're saying about like the Navy, make me think of in the kitchen, we literally call it a brigade. I mean, it's a functioning unit, and all the drama goes on, but that builds these incredible connections to the people that you're working with. And it's unlike anything else. It's the same now that we can, segue into working at the winery and working at that. I mean, there's these bonds, and you've worked all over the world, but there's these bonds you form through this high pressure situation because, one way or another, we ended up what we're doing, but it's through a passion. We're passionate about what we do. You go through the hell, and you're next to this guy who you want to punch him in the face. You and I have worked harvest together, but that bond is something spiritual. It's the same type of thing of you sitting at the table with Granddad and learning that food. It's the same type of thing of going, I have this passion to make some wine, or I want to do that, but it's really being in the trenches with someone that creates this bond of humanity, realization. It's a beautiful thing, right?
It's great. It is. It's something I'm very, very grateful for.
Hey friends, Mike Anderson here for Drop the Check. Have you ever had the perfect bubble? I mean, what is the perfect bubble? Is it that one that you got from stuffing 6 wads of gum in your mouth next to the baseball field? Or maybe the ones that you blew for your kid's 2nd birthday party? For me, it's probably the one that I stick over my head when someone asks me to be on a Zoom call. But if you really want the perfect bubble, try Topo Chico. Topo Chico is the best sparkling water because the bubbles are perfect. And if there's ever a collaboration between Topo Chico and Pearson Meyer Wines, perfection times 2. Topo Chico, the bubbles are perfect. Now, back to the show.
Actually, so what happens is as Granddad makes the suggestion to me that I might be interested in pursuing a degree in enology, it hadn't really even occurred to me. So I just, walked into the transfer center the next week, found out that it was in fact really easy.
You mean transfer center of school?
Of school, sorry, yes.
To California system.
Right, to transfer up to Davis into the enology program. They gave me, I had a sizable list of prereqs that I needed to satisfy. Having had the perception for basically my whole life to that point that I was a liberal arts person. Mm-hmm. I had not had a math or science class since my last year of high school.
Sure.
And so I had a lot to catch up on.
Yeah.
And I could have done all of that in Southern California, but I was really keen to get to Davis. So I did 1 year in Southern California and transferred to Davis. And my first year at Davis, I wasn't in the program. Basically, I was doing my sophomore year of, prereq stuff. Yeah. But yeah, so anyway, I walked into the transfer center, said, "Can I do this?" They said, "Yep, here's how." And I put that in motion. And a year later, I was on the way.
You're at Davis. So now we're going to about 1998. No, it's like 1997. 1996.
So 97 would have been when I started taking, when I was finally ready to get into the enology classes.
Right. Yeah. And that's when I show up. And so I've told you this many times, but just for the story, because people are listening, well, maybe 1 or 2 people are listening. So I'm very, very proud of myself. I was a learned person. From the South, I had left my home grounds and ventured off to California, and I did very well in school, and I was very knowledgeable, and my wine knowledge was world class. And I was walking through the halls of the heralded UC Davis Viticulture and Enology program, and I was very proud of myself. And I don't know what I had in my mind, like there was going to be people like, I thought it was like Harvard or something. I don't know, where everyone would be wearing, where everyone would be wearing like the tweed jackets with elbow pads, and then like
Dinsmore Webb.
Yes, exactly.
Bow ties.
He was
fly.
And then what was it like in the 80s? Or the 70s, 60s, I don't know, the sommelier who would have the little...
Oh, the taste van.
The taste van. The thing around your neck with the, like, it's going to be very serious. And like maybe one or two of the first people I saw was the old Matt Rorick. And Rorick comes in with, I don't know, I think he had like a shaved head, long Southern California khakis, like, I don't know, cut off or something. The chain wallet, the chain thing, tattoos like up and down. And my immediate thought was, I've made a horrible life decision.
Right. So you just described me, and you think you've made a bad life decision.
And
when I look back at my pictures of myself at that time, and I'm like, fuck.
No, I thought you were going to say you saw me and you thought you made a bad decision.
Oh, my God. Like, I just don't know what in the actual fuck I was thinking. So, basically, my whole time at Davis, my hair, I would shave it. It would grow out, and it would get to a certain length, and I would bleach it. Platinum white,
yeah.
And then it would grow a little longer, and when the roots started to come in a little darker, I just shave it and start the process again. So like the whole time I was at Davis, it was just in that cycle, like shaved head or really short white dyed, bleached white hair. I wore a lot of Hawaiian shirts.
A lot of very long shorts.
Long shorts, black socks pulled up.
Cut off khakis, French braids, and house shoes.
I wasn't that fly. And yeah, I mean, who was it? Was it you who was telling me this not too long ago, that they had run into? Oh no, it was Scotty Schultz. Told me that he was having. He said, "Hey," he texted me. He's like, "Look, I just had a lunch with an old classmate of yours from Davis." Oh, really? He said, he asked, if I don't know how my name came up in conversation, but he said, "Oh, yeah, how is Rorick doing?" And Scotty says, "He's doing great." He's like, "Yeah, God, he's still in the wine business, huh?" And he said, "I just, remembered him from Davis, and I thought, there's no way in hell this asshole's gonna stick with wine."
Well, that's the funny thing is that from day one, when my expectations of you were so low, that it only increased tremendously from there, and it's just it ties into everything we're talking about, but such a life lesson of evaluating a situation before you really fucking know what's going on. But quickly, maybe not so quickly, but over the first period of months of us being in school together, not just me and you, but Elizabeth and Andrew Levy and
Drew Dog,
the whole crowd. It's like the same type of thing we're talking about, like in the restaurant. We're in the thick of things. We become friends, and thank God that I think we were all very open-minded about who we were. Who are all the apostolists and all the Greek guys?
Oh my God, I haven't thought about those guys in ages.
And what's his name from Greece? his family has a big winery. I had like his
totally
hat. I mean, so all these people from like around that, none of us had the same backstory. Right. None of us had the same backstory. I mean, even if as simple as me and you and Elizabeth and Andrew and those people, none of us had the same backstory. And we just like kind of came together. And then this will like, circle back, like as we started like hanging out at like, little parties or whatever, and, enjoying wine together, enjoying the experience together, enjoying learning together, where, I was fortunate enough to go back to your place in Oceanside and get to raid Granddad's cellar with you. I mean, God, that's a world of existence. That's life at its richest.
Well, and turnabout is fair play. So I got to go to Marietta and check out the big chicken.
Exactly. I mean, it's pretty amazing that's where but that's only however many years ago. So then we're in school at Davis. We do our run. We had, I don't know what can we say about our time at Davis? I mean, we did a lot of weird stuff.
It was really, we did a lot of weird stuff. A lot of stuff. I was introduced to a lot of things that were brand new to me at Davis. Probably the most significant of those things was the P-Funk.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, I remember I actually went into this bike shop. So Davis is second, or at least while we were there, it was second only to Amsterdam in the number of bicycles per capita.
Wow.
Big bike culture there because it's flat as fuck.
Well, Davis is, yeah.
And so you can cycle anywhere you want, and it's not a big town. It's easy. So I walk into this bike shop. I have this vivid memory of this. And I think I was building that. Did you ever see that lowrider?
You had a lot of different bikes.
So I was building this lowrider bike, and I was looking for a particular part.
By the way, of course you were building a lowrider bike.
Yes. So I'm sorry. I walk into this bike shop, and I asked the guy working there if he has whatever part it is I'm looking for, and he says, "Hold on a second, let me go look in the back." And I'm like, what is this? What is this playing? What is this music playing? And it was Chocolate City, and I was just digging it. Like, I've never heard this before. I kind of dig this. I don't know what's going on. It's like guy's talking. He's talking about something I don't know what he's talking about. But it's just got this bass line and this, and the little, Bernie's playing a little accents on the keys.
Right on.
What the hell is it? This is cool. And so the guy comes back out and has my part, and I said, "What is this playing on here?" And he looks at me. He's like, P-Funk, dude. What the fuck? I was like, "Oh, cool. Yeah, totally." Go home, look it up. Like, what the hell? What have I been missing? So I was super excited to just dig into that, and you just have this whole musical world open up for me with that. I was enjoying it a great deal, and then I remember we were up at Tahoe.
You and I.
You and I were up at Tahoe. And you were skiing. I was you were two planking. I was knuckle dragging.
Knuckle draggers. Jesus Christ.
And you said, "Oh, I'm going to the P-Funk tomorrow." And I was like, "What? I want to go." And shit, why not? And that was my first P-Funk show. And there's no looking back.
And how many times do you think we've seen them?
I was actually just telling someone the story of how, like, I remember, I think our peak moment, or our peak
I've got mine.
Was I was thinking in terms of like when we were seeing him the most.
Yeah.
Was when we followed him up the coast, went down to Southern California, and just hit every show on the way up.
And what happened when we got to San Francisco?
running into old Peanut at Buffalo Exchange on Haight Street.
a used. I love this story. Peanut plays with a P-Funk, by the way. So Peanut is by himself on Haight Street at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon in a used clothing store buying new socks.
New socks.
And he was over by himself, and I'm with old Rorick here, and I'm like, dude, that's fucking Peanut over there. And so I think, did you walk up? I didn't walk up. I think you walked up, and you were like, hey, man, how's it going? And he was like, yeah, what's up? You tell the story.
Yo, and I was like, because they're playing that night.
Right.
And,
we were going.
And we're going. We got tickets. And I'm like, yo, we going to tear the roof off tonight or what? And he just like kind of side-eyes me and just like,
Okay, so here's my retelling of the story. You want to hear my version?
Yes, please.
And I believe mine is correct because I think, because I'm a couple feet away, and you walked up and you said, hey, man, what's up? And he was like, hey, what's up? And you're like, I'm going to go see you tonight or whatever. And he's like, yeah, what's up? And he's like, you said, saw you guys last night in Santa Cruz. And he was like, yeah. And you're like, dude, that venue was pretty messed up. And he was like, yeah. And then he paused for a second. And he goes, we still tore the roof off that motherfucker. Is that not right?
That is right.
Is that not right?
That is right. Yeah.
Yeah. But we still tore the roof off that motherfucker. And you were just like, okay, thanks. See you tonight. And he went off of buying socks.
Oh my God!
That's a
so good.
My camera, when I get this close I like to be this close because when we do, away, you're way across the room. I like to have you up close in front next to me. But when I do that, you can't see my full lens, and you can't appreciate that I get that. Look at the condensation on this cold, large bottle.
Can I let me do our audience a favor that can't see this right now?
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you have, some kind of new light in your studio? That is, what is this? What do you got, a magic lens?
It's just glowing like what's it called, the Holy Grail?
Oh my God!
I think it just naturally puts out that glow.
That is a glistening bottle. I've got tongue twisted from it. A bottle of Topo Chico.
Yeah. You know what? I've kind of changed up. I'm such an ice cube man that like, in the South, how we like our drinks on ice a lot of. But with the Topo Chico, I've just gone straight. I've given up the ice cubes. I don't want it to alter my experience in any way.
Guess what? You know what I do?
What?
I make ice cubes out of Topo Chico.
That's a great idea. That's a great idea.
Can't say it enough. Topo Chico.
All right, so we go and say, with again, I want to see you have, every time I see you, you have more and more tattoos, and you've made the mention to me, I have no tattoos or whatever, and you had said a long time ago that like, if you don't have a tattoo, don't get a tattoo. So you'll still stick by that?
Yes, but not like, whatever. If you get one, get one.
I gotcha.
But it's not something that, I don't know. I don't think
it's not for everybody.
Yeah, and it does. I like the way they look on people, and I like the way people look that don't have them. So whatever.
So,
but I think the reason that I've always said that is that there is, in getting the tattoos that I do have and covering my body more and more and more to a greater degree. I mean, I'm not like head to toe or anything, but
I think you need something across your forehead.
I've gained an appreciation for the human body without tattoos, right? Yeah. Unadorned.
Yeah.
And so when someone who doesn't have one is like, yeah, I'm thinking about getting a tattoo. I'm like, you're pretty good just the way you are.
Just keep it like that. Yeah. So the reason I brought that up was, in part of the whole story, going through whatever. We go through Davis, and we're, hey, just learning about life and feeling pretty confident. And while you are who you are, and while I respect you immensely, and you're a very, very dear friend, we are different people. We're not the same. I'm a little bit more straight-laced, as one would say, and I'm far less intelligent. But we graduate at Davis. I think it was the day that we finished Davis. Do you remember what I'm going to say?
No.
Oh, God. So we go down to San Francisco, and you and I rode down together, and I think Elizabeth and Sally and someone else, they were going down, and there's a whole group of people who were going to go out. And I decided that in order to celebrate, it would be a great idea to have my nipple pierced.
Oh my God.
Do you remember this?
I'd forgotten about this.
Do you remember
Yeah,
that?
I do. Yes. Holy shit.
So we're at I think it's called Hobson's Choice on the
Choice.
Haight, and we were just having a beer. I love that bar, by the way. Nods to those guys. Cool place. And right across the street was this, tattoo piercing place. And for some stupid reason, conservative, dumb Robbie Meyer decides it would be a great idea to have his nipple pierced. And so, I just walk in, and what's also kind of weird too is like, hey, Rorick, you want to come with me and have my nipple pierced? And so we go into the place, and it hurt like shit.
So
it was awful.
So I can only imagine. So for the record, I pierced my ear myself at home with a piece of frozen bologna.
We did that.
Three holes in the earlobe, whatever. But don't wear earrings. Haven't worn. I don't have any piercings. I've never been interested in piercing.
I did the ear when I was like 16.
Same, exactly. And and so just, imagining what it feels like to get your nipple pierced. I have tattoos. Great. No, that's a needle, but holy shit.
Moly.
Yeah, I'm not into it, man.
I do not recommend it. It's not fun
That's
at all.
a great way to celebrate.
Yeah, what a fun way. By the way, so I don't know, we're going off on weird tangents here, but so I agree with you that I think, people who have tattoos are great. If you do that, that's no problem. But if you don't have any, why start? It's okay, no need to adorn. It's not that I don't care. I don't want my kids to have like regrets later in life,
No regrets.
So I would not want them to have tattoos. So Will, my oldest, who is very responsible, great guy, but he's like you, touch the edge of the envelope, whatever. He sits down on the couch next to me, and these kids these days, they wear like shorts that are like short shorts. The guys do, it's like, what the fuck. So he sits down, and on his thigh he's got a tattoo.
On the thigh.
So let me ask you this, your opinion. It's very, very simple. Mm-hmm. It's just black, and it's a triangle. What does the triangle represent to you?
Shoot.
No, not quick from the hip.
Well, I'm thinking two things.
Okay.
So I know it's affiliated with the gay community,
lesbian,
right? And also and then the upside down one. Narcotics Anonymous, but that's inside a circle as well.
Well, the first one I thought was just, being, the lesbian community, which is great.
But then there's also...
which was pink, a pink triangle.
Right, but then also there is just a triangle.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just a triangle.
And
right?
that's what his mind was. It's like, this is as rebellious as he could possibly be, is to put a fucking triangle on his leg.
Got him.
So dumb. Anyway, we won't even get into your Misfits tattoo.
So this is the thing. It could have been that, right?
That was your original thing.
One.
When I met you, that was all you had. Well, no, you had that, and you had something on your leg.
Yeah.
And you covered that up with a fish.
With a samurai fighting with a dragon.
Exactly. Yeah. Anyway,
which is just a samurai fighting with the dragon. It doesn't mean anything else.
So we're done getting nipple piercings and more tattoos, and we actually become adults.
Crazy how that happens.
We work together at Peter Michael. We move on. Yeah, I mean, this is where, I don't know, this is kind of interesting because in some ways I almost get stuck intellectually back in that time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like, it's almost like that was one thing and now here we are. And, you know, through life passage, perfect example is like, you know, I just told you, I haven't seen you in person in years. Years, and we had all this whole building thing that somehow along the way, you having dinner with Granddad, me, you know, other people would know my backstory of how I got into this industry, but I end up at Davis and in this industry, and it's our whole existence is based upon, you know, what we're doing for a living. We're growing grapes, we're making wine or whatever, but really the whole joy and beauty is the relationships that we build, and that's what matters. So, you know, along that path, we built this foundation of friendship. Actually, you know, if you think about it in terms of time, over a pretty short period of time, but it was a very intense bond. And, you know, over that time, you know, you've seen me get married, me get divorced. You've seen me have children. You've seen those kids. I wish they could be here tonight and to see you because, you know, I tell them stories about you constantly. And the last time you've seen them, you know, they're fucking bigger than us.
Yeah.
I've seen you get married. I've seen you get divorced. You know, and so let's just bring it up to speed right now. I'll get into your vineyard and your winery, but tell me your love life because I don't even know this.
Oh, well, I'm in a relationship with a great woman named Mara. She's also in wine. She specializes in sparkling. So we now make a little sparkling together.
Mine's better. Go ahead.
Sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Something funny just came through my cans. And she's Canadian. She is fascinating. She has a really interesting life story.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Eh.
Okay.
Oh, really interesting. Eh.
Oh, I'd love to hear. Tell me that story.
So on her mother's side, her grandmother's Ukrainian, was captured by the Nazis in World War II and relocated to Germany. She was a nurse, so she was like, you know, basically conscripted, forced to work in Germany for the Germans until the end of World War II, and then was in a displaced persons camp in in Belgium. And her mother, Mara's mother, was born in that displaced persons camp. And they were there 3 years, I think, before they were finally allowed to immigrate to Canada. So they got to Canada then. Her dad worked for, he did consulting for the World Bank when they were going to fund a project somewhere. He would go. He's a forester by education and by trade, so he would go and sort of look at environmental impact concerns. And so he was all over the globe. At some point, he started taking his family with him. And so she grew up in Africa, spent a couple years, some years in Tibet. So it has a really, just a really cool, rich history, really fun stories, great pictures of her looking incredibly grumpy as a child in India.
Of course.
And then she she studied enology in the UK.
Okay.
She
at the same. What school is that? You remember at Cuvison and all
Plumpton?
Is that where all those people came from?
Emma was
Emma.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Who I bought Emma's Miata.
Yes. Exactly. Yeah. Good people.
Great people. Yeah. So Mara's awesome, and through her.
And so how did you guys connect?
It was the 3rd of July.
Tinder?
I was just, what's that? I was just, it's like one of the things that I really appreciate about the iPhones is how it like throws memories, like little groups of pictures from a certain time or a theme together at you. And out of nowhere, like this thing popped up, and I don't even know what the theme was. It might have been like pool parties or, no, you know what? It was a year ago on this date. It was July 3rd, 2017 is when we met. And it was at a pool party at a friend's house on the east side of the valley that's now burned down.
Sounds so horrible.
Right. Well, that's our life here now. So we have a lot of friends in common. We're in the same circles, but had just never met. And I was in a little bit of a rocky place. I was kind of coming out of my divorce and trying to, sort some things out in my own head. And she was just very understanding and also persistent. Yeah. And I kind of I think I relatively well pulled my shit together, and
Hopefully so. I don't know if I would actually say that you've pulled your shit together amazingly well. I think that we could probably talk for 6 more hours, and we will. But speaking of that, of pulling your shit together, it's just been such a beautiful thing to watch. Don't want to get emotional, but your success of founding and just having that spirit of adventurism and moving out and not doing the mundane, and creating your brand Forlorn Hope, and creating the wines that you do with your vision, getting your own vineyards, getting your winery, moving around the world and making wines in other places. It's incredibly inspirational, for one, and incredibly ties into exactly everything that we're talking about. It's like it goes so far beyond wine. It goes so far beyond food and beverage, but it is really impactful and interesting that somehow that's the spawn, the genesis of what it's the launching pad. Somehow that appreciation for what we're doing, that's how you found, your girl. I mean, it's like, I don't know. Maybe I'm rambling, but it is profound, right? I mean, it's very special. Yeah, absolutely. It's our lives. That's all I can say.
And I mean, the way that, it just kind of looking like sitting down with you and recapping my life. It's an interesting endeavor to just sit, like, actually say, okay, cool, I'm going to tell you the story, and going, like, reliving some of those twists and turns and
how we ended up here
and what the hell.
But I wouldn't recreate it. Yeah. I mean, I want it just like it is.
Yeah.
There's a lot of fucking, pain that goes back in there, and there's a lot of, missteps, and you didn't become a professional skateboarder, but you're here now. See, we're here together.
Totally. So, and I not absolutely happy with that. I wouldn't change it. However, there's a part of me that wonders, not that life could be better.
Right.
Not I wish I had done that and then ended up here, but there's a part of me that wonders if I had taken that fork in the road just out of curiosity, what would life be like, just as as a hypothetical exercise, it's
as an intellectual,
endlessly fascinating.
Of course, it is.
Where in the hell, would I be right now?
I could have taken 10 million different roads.
Totally.
But I think we're pretty good, and I think that what we've done so far, certainly what you've done, is pretty substantial. It's a rich life. And, we didn't get into a lot of things of Clam, our band.
I was just about to say one of my regrets is that we didn't stick with that, because we'd probably be touring right now, playing to stadiums full of people in like Brazil and Tokyo.
What are you talking about? Quit. I played with Kent just the other day. Adam is back in. Phil's back in.
Yes.
We're going to do a Clam reunion. So, listener, Clam is our band that we created somewhere around 2010.
Amazing.
We have many albums.
We do.
I listened to them. I probably listened yesterday to one of our clips. We should put this too as a bonus onto the podcast. One of the best ones is, God, I can't even think of it. It's a combination. I'll get back to it. But anyway, fascinating story about you is that you not only you played jazz bass in high school.
Well,
but I wanted to play I wanted to play bass, and so we didn't need two bassists in the band. So you just taught yourself how to play guitar, and not only did you teach yourself how to play guitar, but you built your own guitar, which is actually playable and sounds good. It's
that was good fun.
Rorick, you're a pretty fascinating person. I absolutely love you. You're one of the most important people in my life, and
dude,
I really appreciate the conversation.
Absolutely, so awesome to get to sit down with you. I love you as well. You are hugely significant. One of the most important people in my life. It seems crazy that we haven't sat in the same room for years, but at the same time, as you'll say with the people that you have that kind of relationship with, it feels like we just saw each other yesterday.
Absolutely. You never pick up, you never leave. I hope to God you brought me one of those T-shirts.
Oh.
So
I'm going home naked.
So before we end this, if people want to get in touch with you, how do they do that?
I have a fax machine.
I'm sure you do.
Get in touch with me. Probably
Instagram.
Yeah, Instagram at MD Rorick.
MD Rorick.
That's me.
Okay,
that's the guy. The wines are at Forlorn Hope Wines. That's all business. MD Rorick is all anti-insomnia.
Yeah, we don't want to give out your personal phone or email. Anyway, so here's the theme. I think we covered enough. We certainly did not finish it all, but I think we can drop the check.
Let's drop it.
Let's drop the check. Love you, brother.
Love you.
I really enjoyed this piece because I think, I at least hope, I certainly feel that the person that Matt Rorick is, the great-hearted person, and we haven't yet to even get into the volunteer work that he has done in Ukraine and like given himself what he does. I hope that is felt from this interview, and I really enjoyed it. He gives me a good feeling, and as we have spoken about before and we'll speak about again on this, about what art is, and that art is, having people feel that energy.
Yeah. And well, that's right. It's culture, it's expressing culture, it's expressing humanity, it's expressing anthropology. That is what art is. And I know, I hope that our listeners enjoy that as well, because that was the perfect example of my full intention, what I wanted to explore personally. And like I was saying, part one, I listened to multiple times, and I'm sure the same will be now with part two as well, because like my buddy Brad David gave me a little screenshot from his truck the other day where he had a picture of part one playing, on his thing there. And his comment was, my travel companion. And that's what I want it to feel like you're just riding down the road with the guests there. And hopefully for the people who don't know Matthew that well, that they kind of or sitting in the backseat, or like we say, sitting eavesdropping at the diner, with the table next to you, that you learn about this person. Even if you've had his wines before, hopefully this is something new.
Yes, and if you haven't, and we should point out, Forlorn Hope Wines.
Yes.
Check him out. Look at his Forlorn Hope Wines on Instagram and his website, and follow him. He's actually his Instagram is really, you get to see who he is. Hopefully you felt it from this podcast, but you see who he is, and what an interesting, awesome guy.
Yeah, and his personal is MD Rorick, is his Instagram handle, at MD Rorick, and from there you can find all of his gigs.
Yes.
All right. Okay. Well, I think we can drop the check on that, man. I feel really, really good about it.
I do as well. I feel good about you too, pal.
I feel good about you. Hey, go treat yourself to a Topo Chico.
Doing it right now. Let's go. Hey, friends. Thanks for joining us today on Drop the Check. If you enjoyed this episode, please follow us on Drop the Check on all of your streaming services and at dropthecheck.com. Please tune in next week for someone special, maybe royalty. See you next week on Drop the Check.